Welcome, everyone, to today's Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here because we are unpacking a really fascinating ancient dynamic today. It's a dynamic that completely dictates who holds the power in almost every single room you walk into. We're talking about the strategic authority of silence. The core concept here is actually painfully simple. The more you talk, the more chances you give people to see your weaknesses. And honestly, it is a timeless disease. Civilizations rise and fall, technology completely evolves, but we humans, we just keep ruining our own lives with our mouths every single day. I mean, think about it. Entire careers have been destroyed simply because someone just wanted to explain. It literally collapsed Roman politics back in the day, and right now, today, it's destroying reputations through 3-minute overlong WhatsApp voice notes.
Okay, let's dive into this by running a quick mental simulation. I want you to imagine two men entering a really crowded room. The first guy immediately starts yapping. He's talking nonstop, over-explaining himself, bragging about his achievements, constantly defending his viewpoints, cracking jokes, and, inevitably, just totally oversharing. Now look over at the second man. He speaks very, very little. He's completely calm, perfectly measured in his movements, and he gives off this undeniable air of mystery. Ask yourself right now, who feels more powerful in that room? Well, almost universally, we're going to assign the power to the quiet person. But why? The psychology behind this is absolutely fascinating. Silence naturally creates tension, and mystery creates authority. As human beings, we naturally fear and respect what we cannot fully read. When someone doesn't just fill the air with words, our brains start working overtime. We start imagining depths of intelligence and strategy that might not even be there. It's the exact same psychological trigger that makes a teacher terrifyingly quiet right before announcing exam results. The quiet person always wins the room because silence acts as a total magnet for our attention. To really grasp the devastating cost of oversharing, we need to take a quick trip back to ancient Rome and look at a pretty legendary cautionary tale. We're talking about Coriolanus. He was this legendary Roman war hero who literally had everything. He was initially adored by the citizens. I mean, he had saved Rome multiple times. But the crucial detail here, the real secret to his popularity, is that most people had never actually heard him speak. Because he was silent, they just imagined him as incredibly noble, wise, and highly disciplined. When he finally decided to enter politics and appeared before the public, he didn't give a huge speech. He simply took off his armor and let his battle scars do the talking. And man, the crowd was incredibly moved. His physical presence, backed by absolute silence, was profoundly powerful. But let's walk through the timeline of his rapid political destruction, because it happens fast. Election day arrives, and Coriolanus steps up to the podium. And then he opens his mouth. And he just keeps it open. He starts bragging about his wealth, he insults his political opponents, he makes snobby elite jokes and acts overly confident. In a matter of minutes, literally minutes, the mystery completely vanished. The public finally saw the real man. And guess what? He wasn't some noble god of war. He was just an insecure, prideful loudmouth. That deep admiration instantly turned to irritation, and he completely tanked the election. Now, you'd think he would learn his lesson from that, right? But no. He treated silence like it was an allergic reaction. A little while later, during a severe food shortage, Rome planned to distribute free grain to starving citizens. Coriolanus violently opposed this. Instead of just staying quiet, he loudly insulted the very foundations of democracy and implied that ordinary citizens basically didn't matter. Obviously, this sparked massive riots. Still, the Senate threw him one final lifeline. They basically said, look, just apologize and keep your mouth shut. It was the easiest survival mission in history. But when he stood before the crowd, he just couldn't help himself. He insulted them again. And that led to his permanent banishment, complete with a bizarre citywide festival celebrating the fact that this unbearable yapper was finally leaving town. Which brings us to the harsh core lesson from Coriolanus's massive failure. A lack of verbal restraint is the ultimate indicator of a lack of self-control. His downfall wasn't a lack of physical strength or intelligence, it was an absolute lack of restraint. Every single time he spoke, he just leaked arrogance, contempt, and his own deep insecurities. So if that's what happens when you can't shut up, what happens when you completely master the power of withholding? To see the exact opposite approach, let's examine a historical master who wielded silence as an absolute weapon. I'm talking about King Louis XIV of France.
Set the scene in your mind for a second. You have the king's highly educated, brilliant ministers. They would spend days furiously debating complex political, wartime, and economic issues. Finally, sweating and incredibly nervous, they would approach the king. They would deliver these massive, elaborate presentations, trying to convince him of their brilliant strategies. And King Louis? He would just sit there. He would listen with an utterly unreadable, completely blank stare.
After hours of their frantic explaining and pitching, the king would look at them and deliver a simple, devastating three-word response: "I shall see." That's it. And then he would just turn around and walk away, leaving his top advisors standing there in agonizing suspense. I mean, imagine spending 3 sleepless nights preparing a massive presentation for your CEO, and their only response is "noted" before walking out the door. Which leads us to ask, what actually happens to the human brain when there is zero reassurance? Well, human psychology utterly despises silence. It constantly craves certainty. So in the vacuum of the king's silence, his ministers would just panic. They would start overthinking. Was he angry? Did I say something wrong? Wait, what does he know that I don't? In their nervous rambling to try and fill that awkward silence, they would constantly reveal their own secrets, their hidden agendas, and their true alliances, all while the king revealed absolutely nothing. Now, to really drive home how high the stakes of keeping your mouth shut can be, let's briefly contrast the king's total mastery with the brutal and honestly darkly comedic story of a Russian rebel named Kondratij Rylyev. So Rylyev was sentenced to hang. He's up on the gallows, the trapdoor opens, but miraculously the rope snaps. He falls to the ground completely alive. Now, back in those days, surviving a hanging was often viewed as divine intervention. It basically guaranteed a royal pardon. He was home free. All he had to do was dust himself off and stay quiet. Instead, he arrogantly shouted out to the crowd, "In Russia, they can't even make rope properly." Yeah, you can guess what happened. That single, totally unnecessary, sarcastic comment made its way right back to the Tsar. The Tsar was literally about to sign the pardon, heard the joke, tore up the pardon, and ordered better rope. Rylyev was hanged successfully the very next day. It is the ultimate fatal proof that once words leave your mouth, you can never, ever take them back. So we know the stakes, but let's look a little deeper at why this actually works so well for controlling attention. Let's bring these out of the history books and into the modern era, using the legendary artist Andy Warhol as our guide. Warhol discovered this fascinating glitch in human psychology. During interviews, critics would ask him these deeply complex, highly intellectual questions about his pop art. Instead of rambling and trying to sound incredibly smart, Warhol would just give these incredibly vague, almost non-committal answers. Because he offered nothing concrete, the critics obsessively wrote entire multi-page essays decoding profound, world-altering meanings in his work that, frankly, didn't even exist. This really breaks down into 3 core psychological tricks that you can leverage. Number 1, silence creates mystery. People naturally imagine immense depth where there might just be a puddle. Number 2, it makes others reveal themselves because the pressure of silence forces nervous people to just keep talking. And number 3, it prevents fatal mistakes. You literally cannot regret the words you never said. It's actually hilarious how we constantly project greatness onto mystery. It's exactly why half the internet will assume a sleep-deprived tech billionaire's completely misspelled 2 a.m. typo is actually a stroke of hidden genius. We do the heavy lifting for the silent person. Now, before you go out and take a vow of absolute silence, we need to clarify something really important. We need to introduce a vital caveat here. Being totally silent and completely mute in every single situation is actually quite dangerous. Our true goal is strategic speech. The goal isn't to be an antisocial wallflower, right? If you are overly silent all the time, people will start to distrust you. Your boss might think you're checked out, or worse, that you are actively hiding something malicious. Strategic speech means speaking carefully, speaking deliberately, and simply saying just a little less than the overly emotional people around you expect. By filtering your words, you are telegraphing emotional control, and emotional control creates real authority, intriguing mystery, and ultimately true power. When you speak deliberately, your words actually carry weight. Just compare that historical mastery to modern times. We literally watch people destroy their careers and personal reputations in the comment sections of social media every single day, just because they got triggered over a misused emoji. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If your words dictate your power, what are you giving away every time you open your mouth? I really want you to reconsider your daily communication habits. Look at your emails, your texts, your meetings. Where can you pull back?
Where can you let silence do the heavy lifting for you? Master your own strategic silence and just watch how quickly the dynamic in the room shifts in your favor. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.